Good morning. Welcome to Automate Live. We're here at day 3 of Automate. My name is Chris Luecke, host of the Manufacturing Happy Hour podcast, and we are here to talk about open control systems, open operating systems. And we couldn't have a better guest than Ken Crawford, Senior Director of Automation at Weidmuller. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Excited to have you here. And we're going to be talking about open control. And I think maybe the best way to start is, what was the automation world like before open control systems and open operating systems? Paint the picture of how it used to be.
Sure. So before operating systems, of course, there was a lot of relay logic and hardwired control to panels. A lot of mechanicals, a lot of steam-driven stuff. And then after relay logic came about, there's PLCs. So PLCs at the time, the demand was that they be very robust, very reliable. And with robustness and reliability, they're really purpose-built and focused machines, much like a toaster would be. So in the beginning, you would have a PLC that would have maybe 100, 120 commands that could be used to describe the operation of a machine. So everybody that wanted to build a machine had to figure out how to program the operation of that machine using the language that particular PLC vendor provided. So there was quickly a lot of different camps that would gather, and they would find their favorite vendor because either their vendor's programmer was easier to use or whatever. So today, as we migrate over, we're finding out that a lot of the luxuries that you have with a PC that has a lot of flexibility in selecting a lot of applications, your favorite applications that describe what you want to do. We're seeing the shift from PLCs that are very fit, form, and function for a specific task being replaced with automation that allows a little bit more flexibility and able to run applications that aren't necessarily vendor specific any longer. So it really opens up and breaks the mold around single source vendors for your control.
Yeah, and I first got exposed to this new, let's say, open source world. I was a long-time salesperson in the automation industry. I moved out to the Bay Area, and there were a lot of folks that kind of had more of that hacker mentality, and they wanted to program differently. But I know there are more reasons for, let's say, this shift from single vendor solutions to a more open source type world. So what were some of the other reasons for that shift, if you could name a few?
Yeah, so I think there's been a big push, a big shift with certain outcomes like COVID. COVID really drove as you mentioned before, a convergence of IT and OT. So a lot of companies and a lot of technologies have been espousing the benefits of IoT and industrial IoT, where data comes from the sensor and goes up to the cloud. And you can take a lot of single source applications, single source components, and put them together. So if I wanted to do control, I'd take a PLC. If I wanted to do network access, I'd add a switch. If I wanted to get to the cloud, I'd have to add a gateway. So all these components it's just more and more expensive, more and more complexity, and it becomes a supply chain nightmare. So also after COVID, a lot of the sustainability issues, when you have a lot of different platforms like that, you become dependent upon the supply chain. So single source vendors, when you have to go in for the programmer, and the single source vendors get you on the controller, and you're using their power supply, you're using their network switches, all of it programmed on their language, you're really constrained by that. So there's been a big push to open that up. So it's not only flexibility or not only simplicity coming in from integrating a lot of those different parts and pieces, the network switch, the IoT gateway, into a controller, but opening up the controller as well to provide the functionality on an application level instead of the PLC. So now you've got not only a toaster, but you've got a PLC that now can operate not only your control algorithm, but maybe someone else's control algorithm that's more popular, like Codesys. Maybe you also want to put in an IoT component, so you need a firewall. So you put an application on your PLC and you can have a firewall. So you're really integrating a lot of this in a very flexible machine, and you're simplifying your control architecture at the same time. And I think that's really been very popular and resonating now.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm just looking at the list of factors that drove this shift. COVID, supply chain, IT/OT convergence, looking for that functionality at the app level. With all these things driving this shift, let's paint a picture of what things look like now for, say, an OEM, for example, right? You have a more open platform. What does this look, tell the story of what it looks like for an OEM that's able to leverage all these capabilities now.
Yeah, so it's a very, very exciting time now. So a lot of the older OEMs, when they would build a machine, they're very constrained by that single source vendor. So you have a legacy effect of needing a lot of engineers that understand how to program in ladder, right? And then you've got IT or OT component with a network switch. Those older engineers may not be able to understand and configure and be so comfortable with that technology. So you have a much younger engineering workforce coming in. And so with an open platform, as OEMs need to compete, there's a big need to stay relevant in their platform. And a lot of design cycles for machines can be 5 years. So that 5 years, you've got to keep up with your competition. Any of the value proposition or differentiation that you're trying to make and roll into that machine, you're responsible for. So you can choose to use the tools that you have from your vendor. If you want to be competitive, maybe you want to add a database to your application. Maybe you want to add visualization to your application. If you've never done databases before, the traditional method would be that you hard code or you code that yourself in C or another program. And it might take 4 or 5 engineers, and it might take 6 months for you to be best in class or get at least in class a solution. But in an open architecture, you can just download an application like an InfluxDB for your database. And if you wanted a visualization piece, instead of writing it yourself, you can download Grafana. Grafana's had over 1 billion downloads. Yep. You can stitch the two applications together, and in many cases, you can do a proof of concept in a single day to get all the data to flow from your control piece up to the cloud through visualization. And you can do it many times with one person. So OEMs can be much more competitive. They don't need to have such a large engineering force, and they can be very agile when it comes to defining and being quick to realize market opportunities.
At risk of oversimplifying, is it safe to say back in the day you had to just go through these 120 rungs of ladder logic, etc., 120 functions inside of there? Now you have building blocks, right? You're talking about the database. You're talking about the visualization. Is it fair to say that these are more building blocks that are easier to put together now?
Yeah, that's interesting because you hit on it. In traditional ladder sense, in traditional structured text sense, these building blocks can be thought of within the program itself to gain the functionality to run your machine. But it's not only at that level today, you're actually talking about applications as building blocks. And the things that stitch those building blocks together are no longer the single source vendor's program or programmer. It's the applications, and what's underlying them is OPC UA that normally ties them together. So you've got a standard application and its inputs and its outputs. Instead of you having to rely on APIs or writing your own code, you can utilize OPC UA as the conduit that connects the output to the input of another module. And then you can stitch together different functionalities of an application to get your end result. So very little special sauce, very little engineering and coding is necessary. It all just flows on standard protocols that are open in the industry to utilize.
This is an area that Weidmuller is delving into now as well. You have your UOS open operating system as well. Maybe dive into, what's special in this area, whether it's just for, the way things are currently going right now are some of the things that excite you about this particular solution.
Yeah, so UOS is one of the best strategic directions that I've seen Weidmuller come out. Certainly with regard to APS, the automation solutions piece. So the strategy behind UOS not only is the open architected OS that resides on our 3 latest controllers, we have multi-core controllers that we're running these on. So the first, foremost, these controllers can be thought of as PLCs. They can be thought of as just black box controllers. So we need to have a good programmer on there, which is Codesys. You can download Codesys. You can do Node-RED. But we're also a containerized OS. So not only are we open OS where you can run these applications, but you can control these applications in containers. So containers makes it easy for you to manage and deploy multiple applications on a single platform. You can use Kubernetes to duplicate all of those structures. But what UOS does is it gives you the tools not only to take advantage of the application suites that are available, and many application suites are available, it also provides you the tools to connect your system to the cloud. So we have very strong relationships with AWS, very strong relationships with Azure, and we have very strong relationships with the IoT community where we have built in and inherent to the design are roadmaps to allow you to easily connect through MQTT or others that are included in the bundle, as well as incorporate other aspects of the DIN rail. So instead of just a PLC, instead you have network switches. Well, we can actually do a VPN application that is running on that core as well, and then that allows people to securely access remotely. We have an edge agent that not only sells separate as an edge agent, but also can be bundled as an application that runs on UOS. So we're very strategic and very focused on enabling OEMs to quickly develop and stay relevant and agile in a very competitive landscape at one of the best price points in the market right now.
Maybe as we get to the end of our conversation, let's make this actionable. How do folks start thinking differently about control systems and moving to these open operating systems? Would you say it's happening naturally? Would you say a lot of folks are still thinking in the structured text ladder logic way? Where is the industry today, and what will it take to get to a new stage, if you will?
Yeah, so I think that ladder is, at one time, Modbus TCP was king. Right? It was the only protocol on the shop floor, really the most pervasive. Now Profinet is king. So Profinet in the last 20 years has really taken over the protocol space, the Ethernet space. I think you're going to see the same thing. Ladder at the time was the predominant programming language, mostly because on the plant floor, electricians could relate to that. And so you could have electricians very easily act as a programmer to help troubleshoot and expand and adapt machines. But the newer generations, they're much more apt to download applications, play with applications, build their own applications. And when you can do this on anything, so we have a UOS marries 2 very strong things together. One is a PLC, the robustness of a PLC. The other is the flexibility of a PC. But most people can just download and run this process on a PC. So they can, a lot of colleges now, a lot of schools now are enabling their students to download and build these applications on their network or on their laptop. Very easy to learn how to program, very easy to build applications. And then it's just natural that these will come off a laptop into a controller that's going to accept the same development, the same languages, the same look and feel that they have on their laptop to a PLC. We're going to see that starting to really take off and be the norm in the future.
Yeah. No, my conversations, I always sensed people had been itching for this in the industry. So I'm glad to see that's the direction things are going. Where can people go to learn more about UOS and connect with you and Weidmuller?
So www.weidmuller.com, and we have navigation pages specifically around UOS to get more information about what it can run on, what it can do, and what we can do with IoT and enabling really data from the edge into the cloud.
Excellent. Well, Ken, really appreciate you taking us through this topic today. Great having you here at Automate Live. We will be back here very soon with more interviews at Automate. See you soon.